She got pregnant for money. Never told me. Said it was her body, her choice. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just moved out, filed for divorce, and watched her world slowly fall apart. My name's Thomas Graves. I'm 41 years old, been married for 12 of those years to a woman named Elise. We live in a two-story craftsman on the east side of town, where the neighbors still wave when they drive by and the mailman knows your name. I work as a systems analyst at a logistics firm, nothing glamorous, but dependable. I like order, I like routines, and I like knowing that when I put in a full day's work, I come home to something solid. At least, I used to think so. For most of our marriage, Elise was the kind of person who made lists for everything: groceries, weekend projects, vacation routes with rest stops highlighted in yellow. She taught high school English, took her coffee with oat milk and cinnamon, and had a laugh that could turn a bad day around in 10 seconds flat. She still laughs, now and then. But something's off. Has been for a while. I couldn't tell you exactly when it started, but it was small things at first. Her phone, for one. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen like it was just another appliance. Now it's glued to her hand or tucked in her purse like state secrets might spill out if someone glanced at the screen. I'm not the snooping type. I've always believed if you need to go through someone's phone, you already know the answer. But it bugged me. Then there were the late nights. Not many, and never with dramatic excuses. Just small changes. A faculty meeting that ran too long. A book club she joined, though she never once brought a book home. One Thursday, she came back at almost 10, said they stayed late discussing the night circus. I asked her what she thought about the ending. She blinked, then said, "Oh, I didn't finish it yet." Thing is, I'd seen the copy she borrowed. Spine uncreased. Pages untouched. Still, I said nothing. Just logged it. Around that same time, I noticed the medical receipts. Slipped between bills in the recycling bin, half-folded and unread. They weren't alarming by themselves, just dates and clinic names, but I hadn't heard a word about doctor visits. And she's not the type to miss work for no reason. Once, she got food poisoning during finals week and still went in with a thermos of mint tea and a saltine in her pocket. I asked once, lightly, what the appointment was for. She looked up from her tea, smiled, and said, "Just a routine checkup." That was it. No extra detail. Just the kind of answer you're not supposed to question unless you're ready for a fight. But it wasn't a fight I wanted. Not yet. I wanted clarity. See, I'm not the kind of man who flips a table because something doesn't feel right. I'm the type who checks the legs first. I started noticing patterns. The days she came home late were always Wednesdays or Fridays. Her perfume changed, too. Used to be lavender and something soft. Now it was sharper, muskier, like cologne filtered through a flower shop. New shoes showed up. Flats with tags still tucked underneath. My gut told me she was seeing someone. I just didn't know who. I never followed her. Never trailed behind like some noir detective with a trench coat and a bad attitude. I simply paid attention. I noticed when she'd take calls in the backyard with her voice low, back turned to the house. I noticed how she started humming around the house again. Not our songs, but something new, something upbeat. And I noticed how, on more than one occasion, she'd wake up before dawn, get dressed, and drive off without saying a word. The first time, I assumed maybe she was helping a friend. Or maybe her mom had a doctor's appointment. But the third time, I knew it was something else. Especially when she came back with hospital wristbands still pressed into her skin and a disposable water bottle labeled Northway OB services. That one I filed under very important. Still, I didn't confront her. I made us pancakes the next morning like nothing had changed. Asked if she wanted blueberries or chocolate chips. She said blueberries. She always says blueberries. I watched her eat, calm as ever, and smiled across the table. Inside, my mind was moving like clockwork. It was a Sunday morning when she told me. The kind of morning where the sunlight filters in through the blinds and everything feels still, domestic, safe. I just finished folding the laundry, of all things. Elise was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold. She wasn't scrolling her phone or flipping through a magazine like she usually did. She was just sitting, staring out the window like it owed her an answer. I asked her if she was okay. She didn't answer right away. Just took a slow breath and said, "I need to tell you something." Now, those 7 words, "I need to tell you something," they're rarely followed by anything good. But I didn't flinch. I sat across from her, folded my hands, and nodded. "Okay," I said. She looked me dead in the eyes. Not ashamed. Not nervous. Just resolute. "I'm pregnant," she said. My heart skipped. Everything inside me froze for a second. I did the math, instantly, reflexively. We hadn't been intimate in months. Not properly. Not in the way that leads to this. Before I could speak, she kept going. I'm a surrogate. For a couple in Colorado. I blinked. Surrogate? I waited for the joke, or the punchline, or at least the part where she'd tell me this was a decision we made together and I had just forgotten somehow. But her face didn't shift. She said it like she was reading a weather report. Dry. Informational. I stared at her, my mind spinning, searching for a foothold. You're, what? I finally said. A surrogate, she repeated, calmly. They paid up front. We're supposed to get the rest after delivery. It's through a private contract. Private. I sat back in my chair, trying to process the weight of that word. She hadn't said we. She said I. No discussion. No late-night talk about debt or dreams or even desperation. Nothing. She took another sip of her coffee. It's my body, she added, as if she were preemptively defending herself from an argument I hadn't started. And we needed the money. I thought you'd understand. I didn't answer. Because I didn't understand. Not one bit. We're not rich by any stretch, but we're not starving. The mortgage is manageable. My car's 10 years old, sure, but it runs fine. We don't take vacations to Paris, but we've got meat in the freezer and heat in the winter. When had that stopped being enough? She looked annoyed by my silence. Like I was supposed to applaud her entrepreneurial spirit. Like I was being difficult for not jumping up to thank her for renting out her womb without so much as a heads up. I swallowed hard, my voice quieter than I expected when I finally spoke. You didn't think I deserved to be part of that decision? She shrugged. Shrugged. It's not like we were planning more kids. And it's not yours, Tom. It's just biology. Temporary. Just biology. Like she was talking about a skin graft. Not a life. Not her body being used to carry someone else's future while I stood on the sidelines like a forgotten extra in a scene she wrote alone. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about the money. It was about something else. Something deeper. Something broken. This wasn't Elise making a financial move to save us from ruin. This was Elise making a choice without me about something intimate, invasive, and monumental, and doing it with the quiet certainty that my input didn't matter. I didn't yell. Didn't throw a glass or storm out or pound the table. I just sat there. Not stunned. Not even heartbroken in the traditional sense. Just hollow. Like someone had opened a drawer inside me and quietly taken something important I hadn't realized I'd never get back. I didn't say much after that Sunday. She thought I was mad, sulking. That I needed time to cool off, maybe wrap my head around it and come back to the table ready to apologize for making her feel judged. But I wasn't sulking. I was done. Not in the shouting, door slamming, toss your ring in the sink kind of way. No storm. No crescendo. Just silence, like a light switch flipped in the middle of a sentence. That night, after she went upstairs, I stripped the sheets from our bed and took the pillow I'd slept on for over a decade down to the guest room. No ceremony. No speech. Just walked the hallway like I'd walked it 1,000 times before, except this time. I didn't stop at our door. She didn't ask why. Not that night. I made coffee the next morning, same as always. Poured her a cup, even left her favorite mug on the counter. But I didn't sit with her. I didn't ask how she slept, or what her plans were for the day. I went back to the guest room, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened my laptop. First, I logged into the bank. I moved half the money into a new account. Then I called the credit card company. Froze the joint card. The one we'd used for groceries and gas and the occasional dinner date before those stopped happening. The bank rep asked if I was sure. I was. Next came the lawyer. His name was Calvin Rowe. Older guy. Sharp voice. No small talk. I told him I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't interested in a fight. I just wanted to separate cleanly. Quietly. I wanted my name off things that didn't belong to me anymore. Her choices, her future, her idea of family. He asked the usual questions. Any kids? No. Any contested assets? Just the house. I told him I'd walk away from it if I had to. I didn't need bricks. I needed peace. The packing started a few days later. I didn't announce it. No boxes stacked dramatically in the living room. Just small things, pulled one by one. Shirts. Tools. My grandfather's watch from the sock drawer. I moved with the precision of a man who's taken apart a machine before. Quiet, methodical, focused. She noticed eventually, of course. Caught me folding sweaters into a suitcase on a Wednesday night. Are you really going to stay mad over this? She asked. arms folded like a schoolteacher dealing with a child refusing to eat his vegetables. "I'm not mad," I said. She blinked. That confused her more than yelling would have. "Then why are you acting like this?" I zipped the suitcase closed. "I'm not acting." She scoffed. "So what? You're just going to leave?" I looked at her, really looked, and saw someone I used to know. Not a villain. Not a monster. Just a woman who stopped seeing me a long time ago and never thought I'd notice. "I'm not leaving," I said. "I'm letting go." She stared at me, waiting for a fight that wasn't coming. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't list my grievances. Didn't ask for anything, not closure, not understanding, not even fairness. What I needed, she couldn't give. And I wasn't going to beg for it. When I went to sleep that night, I didn't lie awake thinking about the past or imagining some confrontation that might fix it. I just slept. Deep, dreamless sleep. Because when you've already left someone in your heart, all that's left to do is pack the rest. I left before the sun came up. No suitcase in hand. Just a duffel bag slung over my shoulder and a folded letter tucked under the coffee maker, same spot where I used to leave her notes when we were still something like in love. This one wasn't a love note. It wasn't angry either. No accusations. No grand monologue. Just the plain, stripped-down truth. "Elise, you made your decision. I'm making mine. There's nothing to discuss. Nothing to fix. I won't make a scene. I just won't be part of this anymore. Take care of yourself. Tom." That was it. 3 short paragraphs, typed, printed, and signed in pen. I didn't even fold it in half. Just left it flat on the counter like a receipt. Like proof of a transaction now complete. She was still asleep when I closed the front door for the last time. I paused once on the porch, just a breath, and then walked to the truck. The air was cold. Crisp in a way that wakes you up fast. I didn't check the rearview mirror as I pulled away. Didn't need to. By the time the sun broke the horizon, I was unlocking the door to a 1-bedroom apartment on the west side. Cheap carpet. Beige walls. Smelled faintly of old paint and pine cleaner. The kind of place where nobody asks questions and nobody cares if your mailbox is still blank. It was mine. The first few days were quiet. Unnaturally quiet. No footsteps overhead. No drawers slamming. No perfume hanging in the hallway like a ghost. Just me, a mattress on the floor, and a coffee maker I picked up from a clearance shelf. Her texts came in the next morning. "Where are you?" "Tom, this is ridiculous. Can we talk?" Then the calls. 5 missed by noon. 8 more by evening. I didn't answer. Not because I was trying to punish her, but because there was nothing left to say. She made her decision. She did what she did without me. And now she'd have to live with the echo of that choice. I didn't block her. That would have been a declaration of war. I just ignored the noise. Set the ringer to silent and left the phone face down on the nightstand. The silence wasn't cold. It was clean. The apartment was small. Modest. But I filled it slowly. A second-hand table. 2 chairs. A bookshelf that leaned a little to the left. The kind of place you build not to impress anyone, but just to breathe. I found a rhythm. Grocery runs on Sunday. Laundry on Thursday. Dinner alone, but peaceful. I played the same old records I used to play back when life still had a pulse. I read again. Not doom-scrolling headlines, but books. Real books. Pages that didn't glow. I even started running again. First just around the block. Then a mile. Then 2. The rhythm of footsteps against pavement felt honest. No pretending. No performance. Just forward motion. Some nights, I'd lie in bed and think about all the things she didn't say, and how much louder that silence had grown over the years. It wasn't the surrogacy that ended us. That was just the exit sign. The truth is, I'd been sitting in a marriage that stopped being a partnership long before contracts and clinics got involved. She chose something without me. Now I was choosing peace without her. And in the stillness of that apartment, 1 plate, 1 fork, 1 set of keys, I started to feel something I hadn't in a long time. Myself. It started as a whisper. I was at the hardware store on a Saturday morning, picking up some brackets for the bookshelf that still leaned like it had secrets. Ran into a guy I used to know through Elise, Greg, I think. Or maybe Glenn. We did beers at a barbecue once years ago, talked about sports neither of us really followed. He gave me that look, the one people wear when they're not sure if you know you've been talked about. "Hey, Tom," he said. "Didn't expect to see you around here." "Yeah," I replied. "Moved west side." Right. "Heard about, well, everything." He scratched the back of his neck like the words were stuck in the sweat under his collar. "You know, that whole surrogate thing," he said finally. "Tough deal." I raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Let the silence do the work. He leaned in a little. Just between us, I heard the couple. The ones who hired her? They're not doing so great. Word is, they're splitting up. Getting divorced, actually. That stuck. I didn't react, but inside, a quiet click sounded. One piece locking into place. They're fighting over everything. House, cars, even the baby, from what I heard. I nodded slowly, thanked him for the chat, and walked out with my brackets and a truth I hadn't asked for. Back at the apartment, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the chipped paint on the wall. Divorce. No one wants the child. That second payment, Elise had once hinted about it, even before the confession. Said things like, "It'll set us up for a while," or, "It's more than you'd think, Tom." I used to think she meant some raise, some bonus, maybe a promotion I hadn't known she was up for. Now I knew better. That second half of the contract was supposed to be the payday, the reward for selling 9 months of her life to strangers. And now it was floating in legal limbo. Turns out, the couple hadn't gone through any of the official agencies. Elise had found them online. A private arrangement, she said. Fewer fees, more freedom. More money, if it worked out. But shady deals always come with shadows. From what I gathered, the couple's split was ugly. Allegations. Restraining orders. Lawyers talking over each other. And the child? Neither of them wanted full custody. Neither wanted to be on the hook for the bill attached to the birth. Especially not with Elise standing at the center, 8 months along and holding a contract that suddenly looked a whole lot more like a napkin scribbled with promises no one intended to keep. I didn't reach out to her. Didn't send a message or ask how she was holding up. But I heard things, through friends, mutual acquaintances, the social grapevine that never really dies, even when the marriage does. She was panicking. Trying to reach the couple. No answer. She was trying to talk to lawyers. Too late. The contract was murky, vague in all the wrong places. And the agency she didn't use? That was the part that was coming back to haunt her. No escrow account. No enforcement clause. No legal guarantees for that second payment. She was still carrying the child. Still attending appointments. Still waking up every morning with a growing burden under her ribs and no promise at the end of it. What had started as her golden ticket was now just weight. Literal. Financial. Emotional. And for the first time since she told me, it's my body. We needed the money. I realized how short that sentence really fell. Because now, she had the body, and she had the baby. But the money? That was gone. Just like me. The first message came in on a Tuesday. Just a few words, clipped and flat. We need to talk. No greeting. No question mark. Just a summons. Like the weeks of silence hadn't happened. Like the marriage hadn't been quietly buried in my absence. I stared at the screen for a moment, then locked it and slid it back into my pocket. No anger. No bitterness. Just no interest. 2 days later, another message. Tom, can we talk? This time, the punctuation showed up. A softened tone. The kind you use when you're trying to remind someone you're still human underneath the damage. I didn't answer that one either. Then came a string of texts, spread out over a week. Some short. Some too long to read on the lock screen. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. I know you're angry. I would be too. I could really use someone to talk to. Still, I said nothing. It wasn't punishment. It was peace. I'd spent too long in a house where being heard meant repeating yourself until your voice cracked. Now silence was my sanctuary. And besides, what could she possibly say that wouldn't be bending toward pity or bargaining? I didn't want either. Word got around. As it does in towns like ours. I heard she moved back in with her mother. The same mother who once told me I wasn't ambitious enough for Elise, back when Elise still smiled at me like I was the center of her map. She was showing now. Someone I used to work with saw her at the pharmacy. Said she looked tired. Said her clothes didn't fit quite right anymore. That she seemed like she was trying not to be noticed, but didn't know how to disappear. Her usual confidence, that polished, practiced air she wore like armor, was starting to crack. I could hear it in second-hand stories, in the way people stopped saying, "How is Elise?" and started saying, "Have you heard?" No more subtle smirks. No more champagne toasts to self-reliance. She was out of the apartment. Out of options. Out of the narrative she'd written for herself. And the world? The world had moved on. No applause. No GoFundMe support group. Just bills, stretch marks, and a nursery nobody wanted to furnish. I won't lie. There were moments I almost responded. Late at night, when the apartment was too still and the echo of her voice lingered longer than it should have. But every time my thumb hovered over the screen, I remembered the quiet way she'd told me about the surrogacy, like it was weather. I remembered her face when she said, "It's my body." And I remembered the years of partnership she discarded like a receipt. So I didn't answer. Not once. Instead, I stood outside the mess, watching from a distance, not gloating, not seeking revenge. Just steady, like a man who finally learned that sometimes dignity isn't in what you say, it's in what you no longer feel the need to explain. The news came by way of a mutual friend, a teacher Elise used to carpool with. Nice woman, always polite in that way people are when they suspect your marriage is treading water but don't want to be the one to say it. She texted me, out of the blue. She had the baby. 3 words. No exclamation point. No emojis. Just the facts. The birth was uneventful, from what I was told. No complications. Healthy baby. 8 pounds and some change. Full head of hair. But there were no balloons. No teary-eyed parents in the delivery room. No joyful handoffs. The intended couple never showed. She'd been texting them for weeks. Calling. Leaving voicemails. Her lawyer sent a letter, then another. Both came back and signed. They were done, burned out in their own divorce and determined not to take anything with them. Especially not a child that wasn't even born yet when they split. The contract? Useless. It didn't account for what would happen if both parties backed out. It didn't force custody. Didn't guarantee support. The agency, the one she didn't use, would have had protocols, procedures. But Elise had gone the back-channel route. Fast cash, fewer eyes. Now she was legally responsible. The state saw one mother. One address. One name on the birth certificate. Hers. She tried to put the baby up for adoption. At least, that's what I heard. But things fell through. Some technicality. A flag clause in the contract, maybe. Or maybe people just got cold feet when they learned the story behind it all. Either way, the child stayed. And so did the bills. Doctor's fees. Hospital stay. Follow-up visits. Diapers, formula, rent. She'd been planning on that second payment. Had already spent the first one, from what I understand. Used it to pay off a credit card. Took a weekend trip to Sedona before the pregnancy started showing. Upgraded her car. Not lavishly, just enough to feel like she was finally stepping into the life she thought she deserved. Then the bottom dropped out. Her job cut her hours. Said it was budget-related. But people talk. Word gets around. You're carrying a stranger's child for profit, and suddenly the staff lounge feels colder. Parents start asking questions. Respect has a way of disappearing when the truth gets messy. The baby's crib ended up in her mother's spare room, beside an old treadmill and stacks of holiday decorations. No nursery. No family portraits. Just a room filled with boxes and regret. And her friends, the ones who once called her brave and independent, they faded. Slowly. The way people do when someone else's hardship starts to cost them time or comfort. The dinner invites dried up. The group text got quieter. Nobody wanted to babysit. Nobody wanted to talk about the elephant in the room or the crib in the living room. And in the place where her pride once stood tall, there was only exhaustion now. I heard she started looking for night shifts, trying to find something, anything, to keep her afloat. But jobs don't grow on trees when you're juggling a newborn and a shattered reputation. And pride doesn't cover the electric bill. She thought she was gaming the system, that she could cut a corner, make a deal, walk away richer. But now? Now she was alone, broke, and holding a child that belonged to no one but her. And me? I watched from the outside. Not with glee. Not with sorrow. Just with the clarity of someone who'd once been part of the illusion and had walked away before it collapsed. The call came on a rainy Wednesday night. I almost didn't answer. Her name lit up the screen like a flare from a past life, one I'd packed away carefully and left untouched. But something in me, curiosity maybe, or just the part that still respected history, picked up. She didn't start with a greeting, just breathing, shaky, staggered. Then, through the static hum of emotion, "Tom, please. Can we meet?" There was no edge in her voice, no pride, no spin, just the raw sound of someone unraveling. I paused for a long moment before I said, "Okay." We met 2 days later at a cafe halfway between my new place and her mother's. Neutral ground. I arrived 10 minutes early. She was 15 minutes late. When she finally walked in, I barely recognized her. Elise used to move like someone who owned the floor, back straight, eyes sharp, always aware of who was watching. This version of her was hunched, drawn, her hair pulled back in a way that said convenience, not style. Her clothes hung on her like they belonged to someone else. The light in her eyes, the one that used to cut, charm, dazzle, was gone. She sat across from me, her hands shaking slightly as she wrapped them around a cup of untouched tea. I didn't say anything. I let her start. I didn't think it would go this way, she whispered. I nodded once. Not in agreement. Just acknowledgement. She looked down, wiped her eyes with the cuff of her sweater. I thought I had it figured out. I thought I was making a smart decision. It felt empowering at the time. I let the silence do its work. I know I didn't ask you. And I know I was wrong, she continued, voice cracking. I just thought, maybe, I could control it. That it would be clean. Simple. In and out. She laughed softly at that, the kind of laugh people give when they realize the joke was on them all along. I was stupid. Still, I didn't interrupt. Didn't offer comfort. That wasn't what she came for. She came for truth. And truth doesn't always hold your hand. I miss you, she added quietly. Not because I need something. Just, I miss who we were. What we had. I studied her face. Tired. Thin. Haunted. She wanted me to say something. Anything. But I wasn't there to fix her. I wasn't there to reopen a door I'd already locked from the inside. So I stood up. She looked up at me, eyes wide, lips parted like maybe she had more to say. But I spoke first. Calm. Even. You wanted independence, I said. You have it now. No cruelty. No emphasis. Just fact. She nodded slowly. Didn't argue. Didn't beg. That was the closure. No fireworks. No forgiveness wrapped in a bow. Just two people sitting across from the ashes of a life they once built, and one of them ready to walk away without needing to pick through the rubble anymore. I left the cafe without looking back. Not because I was angry. Because I was free. Peace doesn't come like a trumpet. It comes like a faucet dripping until you realize the silence isn't broken anymore. I didn't celebrate when the divorce finalized. No whiskey, no toast, no dramatic burning of old photos. I just went to work the next morning, brewed my coffee, and read the paper like I always did. The paperwork showed up in the mail 3 days later, neatly folded, legally sealed, and done. That was the real gift. I built a new life in the margins of the old one. Simple. Clean. The kind of quiet that doesn't beg for attention. The apartment felt more like home now, not because I decorated it, but because I had space to breathe. I'd hung up a few pictures, put plants on the windowsill, even bought new towels. You don't realize how much of your identity gets lost in shared linen until you pick your own again. My days had rhythm. Work. Gym. Books. A walk through the park after dinner. No emotional landmines. No guessing games. Just the slow, steady hum of a man finally driving his own life. And yes, eventually, I started seeing someone. Not a rebound. Not a fix. Just someone who smiled without strategy and listened without waiting for a pause to insert herself. We met through a mutual friend. Coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into walks. It was quiet. Gentle. No rush. No white lies to keep the train moving faster than it should. She knew I'd been through something. I never had to explain the details. She respected the silence around it. That meant more than sympathy ever could. My friends noticed the change. They didn't say much, but I can see it in the way they started inviting me places again. Not out of pity, but because I was present. I laughed again. I told stories. I wasn't walking around like a man wrapped in gauze anymore. Even my brother, who never liked to talk feelings, pulled me aside one night at a cookout and said, "You handled it right, man. Most guys I know would have burned the house down." Some houses burned themselves, I told him. And if we'd had kids, no, we didn't. But if we had, I'd like to think they would have seen that too. That when life splinters, you don't swing wild. You steady your hand. You rebuild. Every now and then, I still think about Elise. Not out of longing. Not out of bitterness. Just memory. A name. A face. A choice that shaped me. She doesn't live in my head rent-free. She pays her toll every time I remember the man I used to be before the storm and the man I became after it. I'm not broken. I'm sharper. The past didn't destroy me. It carved me down to the essentials. And what's left is mine. It came 6 months after that cafe. A text. Just one line. I made a mistake. I need you. No follow-up. No explanation. Just a digital flare fired into a sky she no longer had a place in. I stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering over the screen. Not out of hesitation, just recognition. The full circle. The inevitable last gasp of a woman who thought there'd always be a door she could knock on, even after she'd locked it from the inside. I didn't respond. I didn't craft a clever reply. I didn't offer comfort or anger or a final dig. I didn't wonder what she needed or whether the weight had finally gotten too heavy for her to carry alone. I simply deleted it. And just like that, her voice disappeared from my life one final time, this time, not by her choosing. That morning, I stood at the window in my apartment, coffee in hand. Steam curled up past my chin as the city moved slowly beyond the glass. People walking dogs. Kids catching a school bus. The quiet rhythm of lives continuing. I felt good. Not euphoric. Not victorious. Just centered. It's funny what peace looks like when you've bled for it. It doesn't strut. It doesn't announce itself. It just sits next to you while you drink your coffee and doesn't demand anything in return. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies or grand gestures or some public reckoning to validate what I went through. Because the truth is, some debts don't need collecting. Watching someone drown in the storm they built? That's all the payment I need. Viewers, this is the end of the story. We would be very grateful for your likes, comments, subscriptions, and sharing of our stories. See you next time.